Our film starts with the mother preparing food for her family when her husband gets home early. What should be a sweet surprise soon turns horrifying as he grabs a knife and walks right over to her, shouting through gritted teeth for her to run. The woman doesn't take the hint, however, and just stands there as he stabs her and knocks her to the floor. As he goes to finish her off, he shouts, "It's not me," as he performs a fatality. We fast forward several years later where the news is discussing this murder case. Apparently, the man was caught not only having killed his wife, but also had their 8-year-old daughter locked up in a cage for multiple years, and he's now scheduled to receive the death penalty for his crimes. That 8-year-old daughter is named Michael, and she's now living in a college dorm on campus with her friend and roommate Charlie. Charlie is the only one that knows of her traumatizing past, which Michael herself doesn't even fully remember. Why does the actress playing Michael look so dang familiar? Well, it's that nutcase daughter from Jungle Run. Guess she's into acting gigs where she has a psycho dad and gets to act just as crazed herself. That night, Michael is awoken from her sleep by her roommate and is in the hallway. Apparently, she was not only sleepwalking but had scratched open her arm and used the blood to paint 3 red lines. A bit strange to say the least, but they just chalk it up to her past being brought up by the news and go back to bed. The next day, while alone in the dorm, Michael discovers that Charlie left her laptop unlocked, and she goes snooping through it. Among the mess of files, there is a folder labeled Roomie that she opens. It contains several recorded videos of Michael sleepwalking. Apparently, Charlie had been documenting her behavior for months. At that moment, her roommate returns home and is a bit upset about her computer being searched through, but Michael's a bit upset about having been videotaped. Fair points from both. After explaining that she recorded her out of concern and didn't share the sleepwalking habit fact with anybody, all is forgiven between the two, and they head to the rooftop for a small get-together to celebrate the start of winter break. The party consists of Michael and Charlie, as well as Joe, Glenn, and Danny, their friends and potential love interests. Everything is going well at first until Glenn starts trying to convince Danny and Michael to finally hook up, where he slips up and accidentally reveals that he knows all about her father's murderous past and even the current sleepwalking habits that were claimed to be a secret to everybody just a few moments ago. Michael is furious that her roommate told the others and starts to storm off until something shocks her enough to stay. Charlie starts acting strange, locking up in place and dropping her expensive bottle of liquor while saying through gritted teeth that she can't move. Everyone stares in disbelief as the girl begs for help repeatedly, before turning and walking backwards towards the edge, screaming for help all the way down to her death. Seems whatever force affected Michael's father has returned once again. A detective comes to interrogate Michael about what happened, and instead of simply explaining that her friend fell from the roof, she explains things like a psycho who's confessing to murder. Maybe take the time to actually tell the details of this situation instead of just confusing the poor detective with the ramblings of a mad woman. I guess it works though, as she's walking home in the next scene. Guess he didn't want to deal with crazy. That night, while trying to come to terms with the situation that just occurred, Michael hears several thuds against her glass. She looks out and sees a murder of crows, all taking turns nosediving right into her window, killing themselves. Guess there's some sort of birdemic going on. Well, this at least tells us whatever is going on can affect animals as well. In fact, let's take this moment to look back at the situation. So, conflict started between the roommates when Michael snooped through Charlie's laptop. Now that is a terrible violation of trust, true, but Charlie shouldn't have hidden the fact that she was recording her roommate at all, especially if it truly was just out of concern. If this was us, we should have been sharing those videos with her the entire time, so she was aware of the problem and could get the proper help she needed. Additionally, once we were outed that we had recordings, we have no reason to lie further about who knows this. That is only going to lead to trouble if discovered, like it is and does in the film. We already lost trust through our first action, so don't dig the hole deeper by telling more lies on top of it. During the actual incident itself, I can understand having doubts about someone suddenly locking up and having no control out of nowhere. That kind of thing typically doesn't happen. But whether it was real or just a stupid drunken joke, she was clearly begging for help while walking towards a ledge. You'd think at least one of the 4 people would have moved in the slightest or even said anything to help deter her from falling off the side. Hell, her boyfriend is training to be a quarterback and was just bragging about his top speed. Not sure about y'all, but I'm not seeing him making the team with a reaction time like that, but whatever, I guess. As for the crows, this is clearly not normal behavior, so this tells us the birds are being manipulated, much like Charlie and the father. We should look into this event further, or at the very least take note of it as we move on. On the same night still, Danny comes over to make sure Mikkel's okay and sleeps out in the hallway since she won't reply. Good thing he does too, because he's woken up later from the stairwell door closing. Seeing that the dorm room is empty now, he rushes up the stairs to the roof, finding Michael standing on the ledge. He gets her down and wakes her up, comforting her as she cries. Looking for answers, the two now go through Charlie's sleepwalking recordings. There isn't much unusual except for Michael having drawn that same 3-line symbol before with lipstick. Better than her own blood, I suppose. The next day, there's a call on Charlie's cell phone, but the person on the line wants to talk to Michael and asks for her to gather her friends to meet in person. The person they're meeting is a woman named Ruby. She's a psychic medium and had been in contact with Charlie over concerns with Michael's behavior. Now, what could have led the roommate to visit a psychic over something like sleepwalking? Well, we'll have to wait and see for details, but the short answer is Charlie was afraid. While waiting in Ruby's study, Michael finds a book with the same 3 lines she keeps drawing. That, or it's just a book about Monster Energy drink. Before she can read it to learn anything though, she's called into the next room with the others. Ruby wants to have a seance in order to contact Mikkel's mother. The idea is that this will absolve her of any negative feelings over the murder that occurred all those years ago. They begin, and Ruby holds a pen and paper as she calls upon the spiritual vibrations of the universe. Eventually she locks up and begins frantically scribbling something. After looking at it, she panics and crumples up the paper, claiming this was a mistake. The group demands to see it though, and Ruby shows them what was written. "I killed Charlie." She claims she didn't write it though and looks genuinely freaked out, but the group dismisses her and begins to walk out. That is, except for Michael, who demands to know who she was making contact with, as that clearly was not her mom. Ruby refuses at first, timidly saying she can't reach into that darkness, but as Michael demands answers with a shout, the woman is suddenly locked up again and begins writing, "I am Michael." Whatever that means. The gang leaves after this, not really any closer to understanding things than they were before. But the friends care enough about Michael, or at least know that Charlie did, to continue researching things. They all stay at her place that night and eventually see her write a message in blood on the window saying, "Let it lie, let it die," referring to Charlie. This is a bit too much for Glenn, who goes to burn off steam at the gym. While they're doing that, Misha and Danny go to the cafe for some coffee because I guess they've dealt with enough sleepwalking for one night. Mikkel shares her theory of what's going on, that her anger can make people die. She backs this idea up, not just with the abusive parents being murdered, or Charlie, who she was mad with at the time, but also through a story about one of her foster parents. Apparently he was a who took advantage of the girls. Yikes. Mika was mad at him for the things he did, and the following day discovered him hanging from a tree, having carved "sorry" into his stomach. This isn't a terrible theory, and might be one some of us have already concluded is the cause, but can we be sure? To find any potential answers, the pair decide to visit Michael's father in prison, so off they go. We now also finally learn where Jo went. She apparently did research on the 3 lines Mikkel's been drawing, and that led her to a book, the same book that we saw in Ruby's collection. This is likely how Charlie discovered the psychic as well. Jo goes to Ruby, who lends her the book, saying Michael can't know you have this. Afterwards, Jo immediately texts everyone except for her this same information before heading to the campus library for some quiet reading. The book is titled The Cult of Dolos, and it tells of a ritual to bring this entity into the world through a mixing of innocence and sin, and claims those who conspire against him shall bend to his will. Yeah, I think this is just who we're looking for. As Joanna calls Ruby to discuss the situation, she's suddenly frozen in place, dropping not only her phone but also her lit cigarette as well. As the death stick slowly starts to ignite the book in front of her, Jo grabs her pen and starts carving into her stomach. Afterwards, she stands up and steadily leans her head directly over the burning pages, slowly cutting her own face. She screams for help as best she can without being able to move her mouth, a very gruesome demise. Cutting over to Glenn now, we see him about to put some weights away from the bench press when he freezes in place. Afterwards, he starts putting the weights back onto the bar, followed by even more weight. We can see that they are 45 pounds, or about 20 kilograms each. Once he's done, he has a total 270 pounds, or about 122 kilos, on the bar, which is a decent amount for even experienced lifters. Now you see, he doesn't just lift it, Glenn is made to hold it up continuously on the bench, straining him so much that his blood vessels start expanding and even his teeth shatter from him clenching so hard. Eventually though, something has to break, and that something is his wrist, followed by his skull. Well, those were some of the most brutal and horrific deaths I've ever seen before. Not sure which one was worse, tell us what you believe in the comments below, but let's also go back and see if there was any way to avoid these tragedies. First of all, Michal should have immediately inquired about the book she found at Ruby's place. Had she done so, they all could have learned what they were dealing with sooner. And learning about the threat is a major step in helping to overcome it, so this is kind of crucial. Joe does this step as well, but with several oddities. First of all, why did she even borrow it from Ruby? Especially if she was just going to call her afterwards to discuss it. Why not just read it while being with Ruby? This way you can watch each other's backs and discuss the research as you're doing it. Second, why can't Michael find out? Maybe there's a good reason, maybe it's personal preference. We could know exactly which if we just ask Ruby after she gives this instruction, instead of just blindly following it. What are the repercussions, if any? Is there a limit to how much we should hide from her? Etc. Third, if we're going to agree to keep this a secret, don't text people about it at all. There is no reason to leave a visible trail of readable messages that could expose that we're keeping things from each other. Either call each friend to tell them personally what's going on, or better yet, tell no one. People can't accidentally share a secret if they don't know of the secret to begin with. So yeah, there wasn't much Joe could have done once she was in the library, and she really just should have been with Ruby so she wasn't alone. And who else shouldn't have been alone? Glenn, the guy lifting weights. I know we can lift without a spotter, but having one provides a lot of benefits, with safety being the number one. If he had a spotter, they might just have been able to save Glenn's life, at least from the weights that is. Knowing this entity, it would have just found another way to make Glenn off himself. Man, this thing is pretty challenging to beat when it can just control you entirely all of a sudden. So, the following day, the last two living members of the group arrive at the prison. Not sure how Danny stayed awake that entire time, must have been some strong coffee they drank. Mikkel meets with her father for the first time in several years and immediately asks why he killed her mother. He responds by telling her that she did it as she was made to do this. Kind of confusing, so let me explain. Papa here, along with Moma, had their very own copy of the Cult of Dolos, and feeling like they were powerless in this world, they wanted to perform the ritual as a form of control. So they both used their daughter as the innocent one and themselves as the chaotic sinners, and brought about Dolos. However, the demon chose Michala as a host instead of one of the parents. What this means is that there is a demon inside of Michal sharing her body and mind, so if she or the demon feels threatened, it will use its powers to protect its vessel. Kind of like a Jinchuriki from Naruto, if you're an anime fan. So because Michala's parents kept her locked away for years after the ritual, possibly out of spite because the demon didn't choose them, Dolos got angry and eventually removed both parents at once. From there, it lay dormant until the handsy foster parent, and once again came out to attack Charlie and friends. But it's not attacking them to protect Michael this time, but rather to protect itself from being discovered. And I'm guessing it didn't attack Ruby because, she's warded against darkness? Either way, at least we know exactly what we're dealing with now. After returning home from their journey, Danny and Michal are met with a detective over the death of their friends. It's the same detective from before, and who immediately starts to use her previous psycho ramblings against her. See? Told you we should have explained things more clearly. The detective shows a picture of Joanna's body, where that pen carving she did before the face burning was her cutting the word sorry into her flesh, much like the foster parent before. The detective can't look past this coincidence, especially with the two being connected to the last three victims. But Mikkel doesn't have time for this and just leaves, as the demon forces the cop to remain seated. Can't tell if she's learning to use the entity's powers or if it's just helping when convenient. Either way, she asks Danny to stay behind for his own safety. Doesn't seem like it would matter much since her other two friends were killed far away from Michael at the time. And hell, Glenn wasn't even researching or learning anything about the entity, so I don't know why it felt like he had to die. Point is, no one is safe anywhere really as long as this thing exists. Michael knows this too and attempts to end her life to get rid of the beast. She first attempts to step out into traffic, but the demon is so quick and powerful, it simply makes all the drivers line up in formation around her. Kind of glad this didn't work, as this would have ruined some innocent driver's day and possibly caused multiple traffic collisions in the ensuing chaos. So Michael's next attempt is to jump off a bridge. Danny arrives just in time to see her jump, even though I have no clue how he even found her there, but her body literally just gets tossed back up to land. This thing can just move people entirely now, or at least Michael's body, because before it was just influencing people. This display of telekinesis is a whole nother level of hassle to deal with now. Out of ideas, they go back to Ruby, who tells Danny that everything Mikkel knows, the entity will as well. Because of this, they can't discuss anything here, so she tells Mikkel that everything said and done before was just a hoax, and that she's really a con artist. Ruby afterwards hands Danny a refund and sends them on their way. Shortly after, despite Danny's best acting skills, he apparently didn't put enough skill points into charisma, because Michael immediately knows he's hiding something. She, or more so Dolos in control, demands Danny to share what he knows, making him break his own finger for disobedience. There was a note written on the bills he was handed. Read when alone, take her away from people. I will contact you soon, and she can't know you know. Enraged by this, the demon makes him slam his head repeatedly and violently against the steering wheel. Before he dies, however, Mikkel gets him to stop before pleading with the demon to at least let him live. Dolos says no though, and she watches in horror as her friend beats his own head over and over again until he cracks open his noodle. Just wanting to bring an end to this nightmare, Mikkel walks right into the nearest police station while she's coated in blood and demands to be shot. The officer, of course, simply shoots himself. Not sure what she expected. This alarms several other officers, who all immediately draw their weapon on Michael. She once again begs to be put down, but this time instead the officers all take out the partner to their left, creating a circle of death. So, with this newfound ability, she could become an invincible superhero, or supervillain if she prefers. She could also just take what she wants and do what she wants, because Dolos is so powerful nothing can ever harm or stop her. That is, except for tranquilizer darts apparently, as she's aimed at from behind and taken into custody. Looks like someone enjoyed the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Now, I don't know why or how this demon operates, but sometimes it seems omnipresent, and other times it seems to only see and know what she knows. Sometimes it can reverse gravity, other times it's taken out by a single dart. The officer that tranquilized her was the detective from before. I guess he's a believer since her power was used on him once. He also just happens to be friends with Ruby, so he brings her unconscious body to her for advice. He wants to just put a bullet in her head while she's asleep, but Ruby warns that he will be dead if he tries it. Wait, how? If he's able to hit her with a tranquilizer while she's awake, why not a bullet while she's asleep? Maybe Dolos' ability to react to or control things is proportionate to the threat it's dealing with. I don't know. In any case, Ruby's plan is to transfer the entity to a new host. They did this once before, decades ago, transferring a demon to a comatose patient who passed away a few years later without incident, taking the beast out too. That would be ideal to do again here, but Ruby can't find any suitable host nearby. That's when, through her psychic medium powers, so the demon doesn't eavesdrop, they get an idea through Michael to transfer Dolos to her father on death row. Not bad if that can work. They think it's worth a try at least though, since if it isn't successful, they are practically already dead. She meets up with her father one more time and informs him that the beast is asleep and she wants to transfer it to him. He's confused as the demon didn't want him before and he doesn't understand why she would give him such a powerful gift. She explains it simply to free herself of the burden and that he can make the beast want him. So now the entity is within her father, I guess. It's not very clear how she's making this work, or why Dolos would go along with a plan that leads to its own destruction. But now the father is about to receive the lethal injection, and he uses his newfound power to stop the man. But it's only temporary, and the man soon regains control and executes the father and hopefully Dolos as well. It seems like a happy ending until Mikkel winks at the camera. Guess he never left her body? Or this is just a classic horror movie ending fake-out. Regardless, this ending was strange to say the least. I suppose Dolos didn't have a say over the body transfer, and maybe his powers didn't work outside of Michael's body. But if that's the case, why did he allow her to bring him there? Or why didn't he control the guards to escort her out? It really makes zero sense how it can be so all-powerful, but also a complete push over at the same time. Was there any other options? Let's take a look. Once we have an idea of what we are dealing with, we need to start researching ways to kill, remove, or beat it. Of course, this is easier said than done with how powerful the creature is, at least when it wants to be. Since it can control us and those around us, we seem to be entirely at its mercy, and even tactics such as hurling ourselves into danger in a self-ending attempt can be thwarted with its ability to physically move us. That said, I would at least try to fight it. Ruby knew a lot about it and is somehow still alive after so many others had fallen. I'd ask her for help first, or send those willing to aid me to go to her. If the entity was making my friend self-harm, I would at least try to physically protect them. Michael does nothing while Danny headbutts himself to oblivion. We should have at least tried to put our hands or jacket in the way to cushion his blows somewhat, or knock him out of the car entirely, if possible. Sure, the demon will likely just find a new way to end him, but it's better to try than to simply give up and accept fate. For all we know, defiance could be Dolo's weakness over time. Their final plan, while odd, seemed like the best one. I would have just tweaked it and told my father a lie about Dolos wanting to be with him in his time of need, and next send him over the unconscious entity. Maybe that's sort of what happens in the film, but it's not very clear. So this threat goes a bit unbeaten unless you can get the drop on it with a trank dart apparently and push the demon somewhere else. Still made for a unique, interesting, and horrifying threat. Remember to always be responsible for your own actions out there and be more than your basic instincts. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Catching you next week. Binge another one and peace out.